Welcome to NFL Daily, where we only feel truly alive after that camera light turns on. I'm Gregg Rosenthal, here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with my friends Steve Wyche and Patrick Claybon. I'll throw it to you guys. You're television professionals.
Stop.
You ever have days where it's like, whew, you're a little worn down a little bit, but then that light turns on and then it takes over. You feel it. Has that light ever turned on for you and you didn't feel it? You know what I mean?
I mean, it happens, but I'll use the gym analogy.
Okay.
Some days you just don't feel like you have it.
Yeah.
But once you're about 10 minutes in on that elliptical, that treadmill, then you're rocking and rolling and you're having all these great memories and you're running from people trying to kill you. You really got it going.
Yeah, you have to, right?
Yes.
In the gym, you got, if you're Steve, you got 400 pounds on your back.
Yeah.
You got to come back up.
Time ago, Patrick.
That doesn't always happen for me in the gym. I'm just more like, okay, we're at like 25 minutes. Is that enough?
But having not been mentally prepared and been on television and embarrassed myself in the past, I used to keep a note in my wallet. I wrote it down after a really bad hit where it was a national hit on CNN for some news story that I will not be unprepared on TV ever again.
There you go.
And so before honestly, like to kimono open here, before everything starts, I tend to close my eyes, take a deep breath, and go into a place.
That's good. That has crossed my mind because Steve, you've had, far more live television experiences than me, and sometimes I'll be watching, I'll be like, I wonder if Steve ever just, man, he's just grinded down and he's not feeling it today because you could never tell. You could never tell
all the time. But I mean, as Patrick said, you make that one mistake and it's a wrap. Somebody else is sitting in this chair, baby.
You're on Zillow.
You guys have been sitting in this chair every preview show, and this is one of the best slates I think we've had all season. Sneaky fun. A lot of just B pluses, A minuses, but we got to start, despite it not being the smallest spread of the week, with what to me, and it's just my choice, is the game of the year.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Greg, because it's the next game for me. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens both played at SoFi last week in primetime. Both got wins. The Ravens playing host to the Eagles, favored by 3, with an over-under of over 100. 51.5 points. Full CBS treatment with Jim, Tony, and Tracy on the call. Greg, the Ravens defense got pressures, 13 different players, 4 sacks, pass breakups, all without Roquan. Was that the improvement that you waited for? And if it is it enough against Philly and their MVP candidate in the NFL's leading rusher?
It's the start of it, and hopefully Roquan Smith is back this week. 2 games where you give up a combined 1 touchdown. That's impressive, even if it's not against the most explosive offenses in the league, or good offenses, though, Steelers and Chargers. This is a whole different sort of challenge. Can you get any pressure rushing the passer on Jalen Hurts? Because the Rams really didn't last week, and they have a pretty nice passer. There was 1 or 2 plays. I know you're thinking of that Jared Verse by Lotta play that we were talking about before. But for the most part, he was protected, and the pressure rate was really low. And then the matchup I guess I'm thinking of even more when the Eagles have the ball is, okay, these cornerbacks for the Ravens, it's gotten better.
Yeah.
Nate Wiggins, and you bring in Tre'Davious White. But A.J. Brown, to me, is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. Like, he is playing the best. I know he's missed some games this year, but he is so difficult to stop. So if they get Devonta Smith back, that is just a whole different sort of challenge and test to see if this Ravens defensive resurgence is real. I'm not ready to go there quite yet.
I am.
Okay.
I am, because one thing you've noticed the past couple games when the Ravens have kept teams out of the end zone, they put Kyle Hamilton more as a deep floater free safety, right? He's a cleanup man, and I think in part because the tackling up front has not been good from the secondary. So he's a guy, kind of like Rodney McLeod back in the day, all the other mistakes I can come in and clean up. So I think that's helped.
Good comp.
And so, when you look, getting Roquan Smith back will help. But the one thing that the Ravens do that the Rams did is they only play 4 up front. They really rarely give you a 5 or 6 man front look. The Rams did that. Saquon got through, and then it was just daylight, right? Because the Rams DBs aren't as fast as the Ravens DBs. So I do think that they've turned the corner, especially on the red zone defense. And if they stop making some of those penalties in the secondary, that defense is going to be even better. I think they've hurt themselves. Patrick and I were talking, the other day against the Chargers. Some of those late calls against Marlon Humphrey were little touchy right there. But I am in on this.
Wow.
And I also think the Ravens 3-point favorite, it's not the home field 3 points. It's the Lamar Jackson 3 points. All things being equal for both of these teams, what Lamar is able to do in taking care of the ball, passing inside and outside of the numbers. Yes, outside of the numbers, people. He's doing that. I think he's that 3-point edge. I like the number on this, and I like the Ravens on this.
But they're not equal if
Why?
you take out Lamar. The Eagles are a better team. Now, Lamar is that reason. I agree with you. If he's going to win, it's going to be
Why
Lamar.
are the Eagles a better team?
Better defensive line, better offensive line.
Is it a better defensive line?
I
don't think so.
Okay, that I'll meet you there and say maybe that's close. But I think better overall defensive talent, better coached defensive talent, better offensive talent by a lot outside of Derek and Lamar. That's a big accept. I know we're splitting hairs here. I think
we're splitting hairs.
I just mean if you pull Lamar Jackson on the Eagles right now, I'm going. I don't care about the NFL rules. I'm going to Vegas right now and I'm putting that ticket down.
Whoa.
Like that team's not losing.
Disclaimer: Gregg Rosenthal is not making any.
No, I'm not doing that.
I don't think the discrepancies are nearly as big as you're making.
Okay,
them
good. I'm glad. I hope you're right because I'm leaning Ravens and yet I don't feel great.
Well, yeah, clearly bias here, but I feel like the discrepancy is in the defensive secondary, especially at the corner position, where the Eagles acknowledge the lapse. They go out and get two really good players in the secondary in the draft. Versus on the other side, I think Baltimore felt good about the Nate Wiggins pick. Some signs to be positive about the Chargers targeted him 9 times. He was clearly the player that the Chargers wanted to go at, and there's a couple times where he's seatbelt celebrating like a drop.
Correct.
Where
several drops.
And so, like, coming into this game, if it's Devontae Smith and Nate Wiggins, no, there's no confidence at that. And presumably, Baltimore is going to do everything they can to prevent that matchup. One thing that they did change was actually having Kyle Hamilton play safety against the Chargers, where he lined up 49 of his 60 snaps playing safety versus the rest of the season where only 30%.
He's playing like linebacker.
Yeah, where he's up there around the line of scrimmage. And so putting your best player in a position where you can make plays definitely helps the defense seem more aggressive. They seem more on the same page despite not having the signal caller out there. I think there's reasons to be positive, but there's also the A.J. Brown factor. And I need Deontay Johnson to run a route without falling down. That
so funny you say that.
He doesn't even count anymore, man.
It's so funny you say that. Walker said the same thing when we watched it. He's like, I feel like he's always fallen. I was like, that's a good note. That's
kind of the rep.
That's absolutely true. Remember, like there was like a conversation in some fantasy circles, like, well, who's going to be the number 1 now, Zay Flowers or Deontay Johnson? Which I was never buying, but like he's not even the number 3. I'm trusting Aguilar certainly,
well, and Bateman,
or the 4, or the
really
5 if
up.
you count Andrews and Likely.
Yeah, and Bateman has really stepped up as well.
Like Shaw didn't make that first play in the first half,
right?
And Lamar goes right back to him at the end of the first half, and he comes up and makes that touchdown catch where we weren't necessarily expecting these types of performances from Rashad Bateman, but
plays
he's
well.
been very solid. Somebody that Ravens rely on.
I'm a little worried early in that Chargers game. The play action was really working against some of those linebackers. Even Roquan hasn't been amazing in coverage.
He has not been
this year.
Not been anywhere close to amazing in coverage.
And so that's a concern. I think when you're attacking that part of the field, that's probably more of a Dallas Goedert. Now they don't really have a great slot receiver, but certainly A.J. Brown is a slot receiver at times and the best one in the league when he is.
But now that Wiggins is healthy, right? Now they're going more of a 3 corner instead of a 3 safety nickel. And so, because, Stevens on one side, you've got, I'm blanking on our guy, 44, Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey. And so, and Wiggins. So now they've got a much faster nickel package, and they're running more of a 2 linebacker, 3 corner look when they do this. So again, I'm telling you, I don't think the discrepancy.
Okay. I want to spend a lot of time on this game, more than all the other of the games. So I'm just throwing it out there for the producers. But I do want to take a moment, and I know where your rooting interest lies in this game, Patrick. But you do have an opposing quarterback who is very much on Patrick's corner, and maybe has been earning your affection. Let's listen to Jalen Hurts after last week's game.
We just got to keep building. We got to keep building. Momentum is the fakest thing out there because it can end and begin at any moment.
This is the guy. This is the guy who's carrying the torch for you. He's now said it twice. He's now bringing it up unprompted on NBC. He is the change. if you're like the political guy behind the scenes trying to make this movement happen, he is your Barack Obama. He's your presidential candidate.
I mean, just like, the cause and effect that Jalen is referring to, I think more people perhaps are considering that, actions lead to results, and it's not necessarily vibes. So I appreciate, and I do pass the torch, even though like I've tried to withdraw myself from the discussion.
No one will let you.
I keep getting pulled back into it, and it's like, oh, you're denying all of this, that, and that. It's like, no, I just think we could look at the game and look at the things that the players do and have that be the reason, as opposed to vibes. Where
when I saw that clip and I didn't see it Sunday night, I was like, we have to bring this up on the show with Patrick.
So I guess started arguing with me. It's like, this is why Atlanta couldn't make those plays in the Super Bowl, and I'm like, because I was talking about the Malcolm Butler interception. And I'm like, so not only are you forgetting what game that we're talking about, like you're forgetting the Julio catch.
Right.
You're just erasing one of the best catches in Super Bowl history.
Correct.
And the reason you're doing that is because we use hindsight to determine like outcomes where like that's the reason you believe in this thing in the first place. Is because you're just picking who wins and saying that they had. Anyway, I got to stop.
It's true. That was our halftime break of this game talk, but I did want to get there, and I should have finished there because I do have a couple other things. Taking a step back, is there any chance that the Ravens are a little tired? They haven't had their bye, and I appreciate the Ravens because each and every week they give us one of the games of the week. You're like, oh, wow, Ravens-Bengals. That's an awesome game, back and forth, game of the week. Oh, wow, Ravens-Steelers saving this early window. Oh, last week, primetime, Ravens-Chargers, two great quarterbacks. They're always the team in these spots, even earlier in the year in that Bengals game and the Bills game. And the Eagles, I don't know if they've played great teams repeatedly. They had a nice win against the Commanders and here against the Rams, but it's a step up for them. But is there a chance that the Ravens are just like a little worn down here? I'm a little worried about that going into their bye. Having to get up each and every week. They also have one less day of rest going into this game.
Well, I mean, I think this game, they may be a little physically worn down, but mentally they'll be up for it. I mean, they've got the bye after this. They did have a Thursday night game 2 weeks ago, right? So you get that mini respite right before this. But I mean, they know the stakes. Okay, they know that the Steelers lost last week. They've got an opportunity to make up some ground right there, and they're playing a very good football team. So, and I think the Ravens are starting just to play better on defense now. Kyle Van Noy told me a couple weeks ago, we're going to get there. We're going to get it figured out. And, we'll see. This is the test. I mean, what Saquon can do is absolutely insane, though, because he looked fresh.
MVP candidate matchup off
he looked
here.
fresh. Yeah.
It's actually a really big game for that. I mean, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be on the result, but I have come to the theory, having looked at the Vegas odds and just thinking about, like, Lamar has a higher degree of difficulty, I think, to win this MVP than Josh Allen will specifically, and maybe Saquon too, just because he's won it twice before. I don't think that's fair, but I think he's going to have to go above and beyond. So if for some reason he plays well in this game, but Saquon and the Eagles win it, it's like people are just going to start crossing him off because they're sick of giving him the award.
No, too early.
As a quarterback, he's always going to have chances to go out there and do what he does. Saquon's opportunity gets limited versus he can have that mega game. A quarterback has, I don't know what the quarterback equivalent of what Saquon did at SoFi would be, but a quarterback can do that in the last few weeks of the season, and it's over. It's not even a discussion. But Saquon does it in week 12, and he has to do that again. For some reason, because the process, again, doesn't necessarily make any sense.
Last note I have. The Eagles have outgained their opponents during their 7-game win streak by at least 110 yards in every single one of those games, and by an average of 180 yards. That's 1,260 yards. This was Ross Tucker tweeted this out in those 7 games. I mean, that is outrageous. I'm not sure if I've seen a sustained period of dominance yardage-wise where each and every game you were significantly the better team, you deserve to win, and you did. And these games haven't really been close. So they really have been a great, dominant, talented team, and that's why this is the game of the year. I'll shut up now.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, you look at those numbers and you go to all the analytical metrics. That also means they're probably starting their drives in the 25. These are long drives. These aren't like getting a bunch of interceptions like the old Saints used to do when they're only going 45 yards to get into the end zone.
It's true.
So you put up numbers like that, those are pretty dominant. But the explosive plays, I mean, we're watching Saquon right here. Just insane. What about the two LA teams getting murked for 395 rushing yards in back-to-back games?
That is a great.
They played pretty good teams. They did. And to Greg's point about the Ravens being tired, probably the Eagles too. It's a whole lot less tiring when you're winning.
Yeah.
Probably those first couple of weeks of the season were mentally exhausting for the Baltimore Ravens. And speaking of a team that is losing and mentally exhausting, the New York Jets are playing the Seattle Seahawks, who are favored by 2 points and feature a quarterback who, I don't know if you guys knew, used to play for the New York Jets, Geno Smith, starting in MetLife. Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez, Christina Pink on the call. The over-under is 41.5 points. The Seahawks with a huge win. They're in first place in the West against the Arizona Cardinals. Now they play a 3-8 team that doesn't necessarily warrant that much discussion, Steve. So let's start with Geno and his opportunity to get a win in MetLife.
Well, I mean, look, it may not go down to Geno. I mean, what Seattle's done defensively, I know we talked about it, before. Last couple weeks, since they've got Ernest Jones, they are playing better football. And against an offense, I think Breece Hall is questionable.
Yeah, that was surprising. Didn't practice Wednesday.
Yeah, so I mean, look, this is one of I think if Seattle gets up early, if Geno and these guys get up a couple points early, the Boo Birds are coming out, the JETS will turn into something else. But I think this is tricky for Seattle. I mean, going across the country, that early start, if Aaron and those guys get going and feel themselves a little bit, then this is going to be a tough game. But I mean, I don't know.
The line says it is. They're only 2-point favorites.
I think this is a tricky game. They've got to get out early. That's not the greatest thing that the Seahawks do. But I think that's where – I mean, look, here's one for you, Greg. Who do you trust more in this game, Geno or Aaron?
Well, it's obviously Geno.
Okay, there you go.
Is it that close?
I mean, again, that's what I think. I think that's a swing vote right there. I mean, as tough of a game as this can be,
And I trust the Seahawks defense certainly over the Jets defense right now, which has just been a bad unit. I think when you took Robert Saleh out of the building, you not only lost Saleh, but you lost Ulbrich as the defensive play caller who's not distracted by everything else, and they haven't been a good defense. Like, I don't really have a reason to think that it's going to change just because they had the bye week. And you mentioned Ernest Jones. I was thinking about it. To this point, you could argue he's the best trade deadline pickup in terms of making an impact on a team.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy.
He's like fourth in tackles on their team since he's been there. Like over the season.
Now, if I'm starting a team, I'm still taking Amari Cooper over him the rest of the season. But to this point, I think he's probably made the biggest impact of any guy who's team. That's pretty crazy.
Hey, on a trade deadline season where most of the acquisitions were on the offensive side of the ball, on a season where we had to wait to see a defensive player come off the board, it shows that investments, especially at this maligned spot that we were discussing earlier, interior linebacker, has such a significant value on a defense, Greg, that since the bye has given up 11.5 points a game.
Wow.
Like, that's how good they have been.
Wow.
Versus, as you mentioned, Jeff Ulbrich having his, attention bifurcated now. The Jets have given up more rushing touchdowns since week 7 than anybody in the entire league. And they have to play against a healthy and spry-looking Kenneth Walker and the Seahawks defense, able to limit possessions, probably lead to a whole bunch of, cutaways of number 8 looking frustrated after an incomplete pass, looking at people's directions, drawing plays in the air. It's potential that has me thinking we should take this to a place and survive on it.
Okay, I would love to do that, and I would love to just listen to the music because it puts me in a kind of a Maui Invitational type of mood here. But they are not available.
What?
Patrick.
No.
We took them to start this unbeaten streak since week 3. Way back then, so they are not available. I would
find another game.
I would like to do this. I want Devin Witherspoon to cook this team. He has just been flying around.
So good.
I heard Michael Sean Dugar, who does a good podcast on the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. Check that out. He made the point of he thinks the biggest difference with this team is they're stopping the run. They were missing so many tackles. They weren't stopping the run. And when they are stopping the run on early downs, and they did it against the Cardinals, that sets up the long distance situations. And the players are talking about it. Everyone can see it. Now Mike McDonald's kind of cooking and drawing up these designer blitzes, knowing how to use these guys, and it's really working. So that combination where the players are really being good on early downs, I don't think the Jets will be able to run, and he's cooking on late downs. We could have a frustrated Aaron Rodgers dirting some balls, or just throwing the ball away because he doesn't, or taking some sacks and thinking about the next excuses he's going to make where he takes shots at national reporters saying they don't have integrity. It's just like, I'm so sick. That was
it's so played out.
I'm so sick of the fake laughter that he had when McAfee was like talking about the reports that were happening. He's just like, it's just like, what a phony.
Well, maybe we'll see Ty Taylor next week.
Hey, that's commitment to excellence.
I don't talk. But people in my circle don't talk to those people. I don't know why anyone would be talking to those people. You maybe look inside yourself and think about why they don't like you, because that's the answer. The answer is people don't like and respect you enough to keep your business private, and so they're putting it out there. That is the answer.
Or maybe some people have lost their jobs because now that you're on the scene, and they got some things to get off of their chest.
Which is funny because he went through and it's like, oh, they made Salah the GOAT, and then they made Joe Douglas the GOAT, and they made my guy Hack the GOAT, and it's like they made that like. Anyways, just the lack of accountability is very consistent.
Eventually, they is located in the mirror. Shout out to they, whoever they are.
Can't fix stupid.
It's time for hot matchups presented by Wingstop. The Los Angeles Chargers, 2.5-point favorites at the Atlanta Falcons, who come off a bye, who come off that loss in Denver a couple of weeks ago. Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, Melanie Collins on the call. Frustrating performance, Greg, from the Chargers pass catchers in SoFi against the Baltimore Ravens. A even more perhaps frustrating performance by Kirk Cousins and this Falcons offense, who bounces back and gets a win in Atlanta.
I'll take the Chargers. A little surprised they're the favorites. This game, I'm glad it was the hot matchups pick because it's a perfect example of why I like this Week 13. There's a lot of little games like this. It's just like, okay, two teams that aren't at the top of the NFL, but show me something here between these two teams coming off disappointing results. I think it's a great test for this Chargers team because I think this Harbaugh Chargers team, I mean for the Falcons rather, I think this Chargers team is almost like the dividing line of whether you're going to beat yourself or not. They're just a solid team.
Right. Well said.
I think they're going to make the playoffs, but they're right on that border of like playoffs and not. But are you going to beat yourself? Because the Falcons do seem like a team capable of beating themselves. And I think the Chargers are so solid, I trust them a little more.
You nailed this. And I don't think the 1.5 is enough for the Chargers. I mean, granted, they won't have J.K. Dobbins, but they'll find a way to run the football. But when I was looking at the Falcons schedule and just watching some of their games, they're not a tough team, right? When you look at the teams who they've beaten, they are finesse teams, right? They've beaten teams within their division. They've beaten Dallas. They got Philadelphia, I think, in week 2. Everyone else they've lost to brings a fist to the fight, and they have not managed to stand up, especially on defense, all the way from the front through their secondary. We know they've got some great players, Jesse Bates, A.J. Terrell, but just when it comes to physicality, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that's not it. And if you saw some of the stuff Joe Alt was doing early in the game, now later in the game, he was getting beat up a little bit, but some of the things that this Chargers offensive line can do to them, I just think the Chargers, unless they're just out of focus, and I don't see them being that team, Greg, I think you nailed it when you said they don't beat themselves. I just think they're the type of team that Atlanta does not want to have to contend with.
And it would be a first opportunity for Atlanta to really just beat somebody.
Right.
Where it's tough, it's hard fought. Kirk Cousins, they're 1-5 when he has a sub-90 passer rating. They haven't really been able to grind out a win.
No.
Where they've won in score fests. They've played opponents who made mistakes. If the Falcons can somehow come together and win this game, but I feel like for this Chargers pass rush, it's going to be like when the rookies always talk about the game slowing down, to go from chasing Lamar and coming up with air at SoFi to flying to Atlanta and going at Kirk Cousins, who's made one person miss.
They know where he'll be. Yeah, that is true. I did like hearing out of Raheem Morris that they want to do some more play action coming out of the bye. That's been a focus to them. We've been talking about that.
Some at all, maybe
hasn't been able to. So can they? Maybe they took the old way they were playing and they took it as far as they could. I actually think they've done pretty well considering some limitations on offense. Their bigger issue is the defense, the toughness. I've never seen a team that struggles so much to get off blocks. I do think Raheem has been an aggressive coach. I think they've done a good job coaching, and Jim Harbaugh is a little conservative, so maybe that helps. Atlanta's going for some fourth downs. They take some chances in this game. It's a really intriguing game. They will not, the Chargers, that is, have J.K. Dobbins, our guy.
Yeah.
Sprained MCL. When I heard that, I'm not going to say that's good news, but considering the history of injuries he's had, I was fearing maybe he was out for the year, and they will have him back. And like I said, I think this is going to be a playoff team, but they have a lot of tough games coming up. Not a lot of automatic wins on their schedule, so they should have him back for the end of the season.
And real quick, when you say they don't beat themselves, Baltimore beat them the other night, but if they hang on to some of those passes, that's a lot more of a toe-to-toe battle than what we saw.
Yeah, just especially coming down late. There was, of course, there were the pass interference calls that you could have some discussions about.
Yeah.
But that Quentin Johnston drop on third down. Actually, the best catch of the night by a Charger was Herbert randomly spun to the sideline and threw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball behind Gus Edwards. And he reached up and snatched it.
That was amazing.
that was the best play I saw all night. Other than that, and there's some lad catches, really not a lot of success to speak of. Will Dissly played well. We'll give credit to Will Dissly.
That will be an off-season focus, is upgrading the wide receiver position.
No, 1,000%. 1,000%. They got to add speed.
Playing against the Falcons defense, plays a lot of zone. A.J. Terrell, career high 77.8% of his snaps in zone coverage this season. A lot of that may be related to their inability to rush the passer, where the Ravens had success as a pass rush group, especially late against this team. I don't see the Falcons doing that.
No.
Unless there's some sort of miracle on the bye, and shout out to Raheem if they're able to pull that off.
I don't think they will.
No, not happening.
The John Abraham curse.
It lives.
It needs to be lifted.
It lives.
We'll see what they can do. Let's go to another team in the NFC South that's on a bit of a hot streak. That was hot matchups presented by Wingstop as we get to another Los Angeles team. The Los Angeles Rams, 2.5-point favorites on the road at Darren Rizzi's New Orleans Saints. Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma, Megan O'Leary on the call. It's a 49-point over-under, Steve, as we have seen a whole lot of permutations of this Saints team here recently. This recent addition, is it enough to come and get a win against a solid Rams team?
So this is one, and we were talking about it earlier. If Alvin Kamara can get going, he's a terrible matchup for, again, the Rams linebackers. If they can't get him down before he gets ahead of steam going in the pass and running game, or Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill's become like, put him in the MVP. I'm joking, but the past couple games, I mean, what kind of weapon is this dude been?
He unlocks their running attack. I think he helps Kamara. They help out each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been very interesting, but I just think the Rams offense in this one here, they get it going. I mean, they're going to get Kupp going. They're going to get Puka. Puka is sick. I mean, he's, no matter how many people you put on him or how you put him, he's going to catch it and he's going to break the first tackle. I just think the Rams offense is going to be a little too much in this game. I like the number as well. I think it's going to be right around there. But I think the Saints are going to have too hard of a time stopping Los Angeles.
I don't know how I feel about this game, and this is a candidate for the survivor pick. Mm-hmm. Although we talked a little ahead of time, and I just found one I think I maybe like a little more. It's the next game on our schedule. You think about that for a second, because I don't know what I'm getting out of the Saints team. They have played really hard under Darren Rizzi. They smoked the Browns team in the fourth quarter. That was a close game, but they got that win against the Falcons. I think the Rams are a better team. Our friends over at the Saints Block Party podcast had Jordan Rodriguez from NFL Daily and The Athletic on, and their host Adam described the Rams as a good bad team, and maybe the best of a good bad team. I think that's about right. They're a 5-6 team. These two teams are kind of in the stage of the season where it's like, can you give us one more week for our fans? Just want one or two more. Like the loser of this game is not going to feel like they're going anywhere. No. Even Saints fans have convinced themselves like, hey, this is kind of fun. Give us one more week. If we beat the Rams, it's like this division. We're having some fun. Give us one more week. Rams fans, give us one more week. Get to 6-6. We might be tied for first place, or we'll be one big game back. Whereas if you lose this game, you're not feeling great. I don't think the Rams are a cohesive group and that rushing attack is a lot and matches up well with the Rams. I think the Rams will win, but I talk a lot about teams find their level. Sometimes there's like a records game where, they should be better than their record, or they're worse than their record. These two teams are exactly the records they should be. The Saints are a 4-7 team. They've now found their level after winning 2 straight. They are a 4-7 team. They're not the worst teams. And the Rams are about a 5-6 team.
Yeah, this is one where you say to yourself, neither one of these teams is going to go on a 4 or 5 game win streak to finish out the season. The Rams have the potential offensively to do it, but again, just so many of the cracks they've shown lately on defense, I don't see them stringing something together like this.
I feel like the Rams have a puncher's chance in every game. The things that they do well,
that's true.
They can execute at a very high level, and they can knock you out if need be. If it's going 12 rounds, the Rams are probably going to eventually, have some sort of error. But like we saw in that game in Seattle, they stayed in long enough for Matthew Stafford to throw that big right hand and punch the Seahawks out, and the Seahawks have had to bounce back from that. I'm just looking for if Darren Rizzi gets a win here, he'll be a third of a way to the best Dennis Allen season in his coaching career. He would start 3-0.
I mean, he might be past it. 3-0. That alone is like more exciting than anything of them winning late in the season. Shout out to our fellow NFL media podcaster, by the way, Cam Jordan, who wasn't getting any run under Dennis Allen. And when I watched that Browns-Saints game back eventually, he's suddenly playing like 45, 50 snaps, and he's making a bunch of plays. So nice to see the longtime Saint getting it done under the new staff. It's like he's reborn.
Well, to quote DA, sometimes you got to pop out and show him.
Well, ultimately, that may be what the season turns into is just how bad was Dennis Allen? We may have a chance to do some scientific work and determine what the real value or lack thereof Dennis Allen was bringing to the New Orleans Saints. And a win here against this up and down Rams team could mean a lot.
Let's put a pin in the Survivor talk and fully talk it out after the next game, and then we can make our pick.
Right.
How about that?
Yeah,
all right.
because
we'll have our talk then. Let's take a quick break, actually, and yes, we will be back. We're going to talk about an old AFC East rivalry that's no longer an AFC East rivalry. Back on NFL Daily, and yeah, maybe the kids don't remember, but back in the day, Colts-Pats, it was twice a year. And I'm not talking like the later Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, where it's once in the regular season, once in the playoffs. That was a thing too, and that was a real deal rivalry. But when I was growing up, Colts-Pats twice a year, all the way through, actually, a quarterback by the name of Jim Harbaugh. I remember a game he had against Drew Bledsoe on like a playoff Colts team in the mid-'90s. That was right at the end before they
Jim Mora
they realigned. That's absolutely right. Jim Mora was in the mix now. Now we got Anthony Richardson versus Drake May, which for two teams that are under 500 makes this an extremely watchable game to me.
Yeah, very watchable. And the folks in the desert determined it's a 2.5-point favorite in the Indianapolis Colts on the road in Foxborough, 42.5 on the over-under. Spiro Ditas, Adam Archuleta, and Adito Kikabwala on the call, Greg, where we saw a dominant defensive performance by the Colts because they limited the Detroit Lions to 24 points, which in my mind qualifies as one of their best defensive performances of the year. Problem is they only were able to score 6. Jonathan Taylor really couldn't get things going, and this high-variance passing attack saw the low side of the high variance with some big incompletions that were not.
Yeah, and they won't have Josh Downs this week, most likely. Ian Rappaport, our insider, said that he is likely to be week to week with a shoulder injury, and he's really key for what they do. So that's disappointing. But Shane Steichen, I think, pointed out correctly after he watched the film. What I thought watching that game was I thought Richardson is building, and despite the completion percentage in that game, it was a good performance by him, and they're getting more cohesive. They need to be able to run the ball, but this is a coaching mismatch to me overall. I'm just not impressed with what I've seen out of the Patriots coaching staff making the same sort of mental mistakes over and over on defense, just false starts galore, penalties galore on both sides of the ball. I think they had 13 last week. Really poor offensive line. So, yeah, I'm considering them as the survivor pick. Them or the Rams, I think, are interesting road options. We've taken a lot of the good teams this week. Just something to think about as we talk about this game, I guess.
I like that thought because normally, you know me, I love Drake May. I think he's going to be a star, and just some of the things I've seen out of the Patriots, but they seem almost to the point like they've given almost all they have, and they're just out. They're just. I mean, I know it's early, but I mean, you see that sometimes. Like, man, I've gotten everything. I've squeezed all the juice out of this orange.
2 more teams that haven't had a bye, by the way, so there might be some of that playing out. Both these teams are among the 6-pack that are finally get their bye in Week 14.
Yeah, it just seems, maybe they're to that point. I do like the Colts because the physicality that they play with on both sides of the ball. We'll see with Anthony Richardson. This is a really good game because of the Drake May factor. I mean, he's just so good. We know the Colts, they don't vary up their defense much. They let the guys up front get after it, and they let those guys in the zone in the back end try to make plays. So I think Drake May is going to make some plays with his arms and his leg, but I just think the Colts are a better team, and I don't know if I'm that comfortable. Yeah, I'm probably more comfortable if we go Survivor with
Rams or with Colts.
With Colts.
I am also comfortable.
Look at this.
Taking the Indianapolis Colts, who on defense have a statistical anomaly. So if we go to the leading tacklers in the NFL right now, Zaire Franklin, 123.
Again.
Nick Cross, 116. Roquan has 110. EJ Speed has 108.
Yeah.
There are 3 Colts in the top 4 in the NFL in tackles right now. They see a lot of action.
That's not what you want. That just means they're always on the field.
I mean,
your offense isn't having a lot of plays.
But what I'm saying is, despite that, they were able to do what they did against the Lions, albeit a David Montgomery-less Detroit Lions in the second half. This team has faced a lot of adversity on the defensive side of the ball, and it still managed to be successful. And I believe in the offense. I do. I think they'll get it together.
Now, the Patriots have had these really down games, and this tends to happen with a lot of teams, especially immature teams. And I have seen that they have usually bounced back from their worst performances. I don't think they're done for the rest of the year. I just think the coaching staff for the Colts is significantly better, and that even though they're not a great team, their defense has played better. I like them better with Richardson playing the way he is now. And I think they're a tier above the Patriots where they are. They're an average NFL team to me, and the Patriots are far from that. And I hate to keep picking on Mayo, but like sometimes you take on the personality of your coach, and these post-game press conferences where he says these little things and people get on him for these little things, and you don't want to make too big of a deal of it. He's like, I can only do so much after they cross the lines. It's like the sloppiness with which he talks to the press. It's like the sloppiness on the field. He keeps putting his foot in his mouth. He's like me if I was an NFL head coach. You know how many times I would say the wrong thing? I'd be out by week 5.
This is one of those things, like we've heard for years, really good players becoming coaches expect everybody to have their same work ethic, some of their values and things like that. And if you don't see it, you lose it like he does. Gerard Mayo was a grinder of a player. Maybe he's not seeing that all the time.
I just don't think they've been particularly well coached schematically on defense either. So that's more my issue. Mike McDaniel it was like easy buttons all day. That thing could have been like a 50 burger that the Dolphins put up. It was bad.
Sometimes a lapse in talent maybe can kind of limit your options as a defensive staff. But I do agree that those things probably matter more than what he says in the press conferences, Greg, which 0 points were scored.
I get it.
I want to get back to it's a linebacker thing, though, because typically your leading tacklers play on the worst teams because they're on the field all the time. But in Gus Bradley's scheme, those are the guys asked to make all the plays. So, I mean, think about Bobby Wagner and those guys back in the day when Gus coached them. Alex Anzalone when he was playing with the Jags. That's his kind of – but it is an anomaly.
I see them on the upward trend. I watched that Colts Lions game closely, and that game could have really been different on both sides. Well, I just think they're getting better. So, all right, we're going Survivor against my Patriots. Big spot for you to Drake May to
I can't
prove
wait.
me wrong.
I still can't wait till Alex Van Pelt puts one on you.
Yeah, we backdoored ourselves in a way for Greg to enjoy this either way. I can't believe we've done this.
I love it. Love it.
All right, let's go to another game, another divisional matchup. Actually, the first divisional matchup that we've been able to discuss here today. The Pittsburgh Steelers doing what they do late this season, playing a division rival late. The Cincinnati Bengals hosting the Steelers. The Bengals, 3-point favorites?
How the hell? When I saw that, I was like, okay.
I'm reacting now.
Like, no.
Is that right?
I mean, I saw that on here. It's like, there's no way.
Why not?
Okay, it's correct.
Why not, Pat? Why not, Steve?
First off, Cincinnati's not a very good football team.
Okay,
we know the Steelers have had, 2 touchdowns in their past 2 games. They're kicking a lot of field goals. Yeah, a lot of people are scoring points on the Bengals. And this is one. Now, I will say this, because I was at the game in Cleveland when the Steelers. I know some people were really encouraged by the Justin Fields rotation. I thought it broke up some of the flow of the Steelers' offense. I think this is a game will work in their favor. I think kind of confusing some of the key pieces and scheming some of the key pieces against a familiar opponent could work against a team that's leaky in some areas. I do think the Steelers need to get Najee Harris a little bit more involved. We saw last week they went really with Jalen Warren. I think this is a game where they can bully the Bengals. I just think after that loss to Cleveland, there's some things they can clean up, like blocking Myles Garrett. They've got Trey Hendrickson this week. That's something they've got to figure out. But I just think overall their defense is not going to get scorched by Joey B and Jamar, and I just think that offensively they'll fix some things.
It's a tough spot. The Bengals have found and located ways to lose football games late, even spots that you don't necessarily expect. Like their former all-world kicker as a rookie going into SoFi and missing 2 key field goals late, turnovers late, scoring every drive, but then mysteriously malfunctioning towards the end of games. The 3 points, Greg, kind of feel like America's familiarity with the Cincinnati Bengals, leaning to where the odds makers perhaps care, and I say this because I say this all the time, perhaps care more about what the public's going to do than what's going to happen in the actual game, because that's what influences money going in their particular direction, because I would not favor the Cincinnati Bengals, especially over a team that's had the success.
Who are you picking on game day view this week?
I'm fairly confident I picked the Steelers, unless I did to try to play catch up.
You're making me think about it, because you're right. Like week after week, we just keep slightly overrating the Bengals. I picked against them a lot, but just thinking it's going to come back, and underrating the Steelers. The Steelers have found a way to win these sort of games. This is finally it. I feel like every game the Bengals play lately is like, all right, well, they got to get this one. And then it's the next week after losing another heartbreaker. All right, well, now they got to get this one. This is kind of the end of the road. I know the schedule eases up after this game, although they have the Steelers again. But at some point, you're 4-8. Like, you're done. You're done in a good conference if you're 4-8. This really is the end of the road for their hopes. Beat a good team. They just can't beat. They keep being close against good teams. I think they're 1-6 in one-score games this season. You got to do it. I picked them to win. I guess I don't know why, other than I think the Steelers' defense in the back end maybe does have some vulnerabilities. T. Higgins was awesome in that Chargers game, and now they're coming off a bye. Everyone's healthy, and just can you outscore the Steelers? You're making a face at me.
No, I mean,
I picked the home team type of game. If it was in Pittsburgh, I'd pick Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm going to be at this game. It's going to be a high of 29 degrees. Okay, so when you got weather like that, are you going deep shot ball, or are you going run the football and pound it? Okay, and that's one thing that the Bengals cannot do. Steelers getting Alex Highsmith back. Bengals coming off a bye. Steelers are Thursday night games. So they've had a couple extra days to prepare with some salt in their mouth. I think Pittsburgh comes out and plays a good game here.
Some stats for you. During the 7 quarters where the Steelers didn't score a touchdown, this was from The Athletic. Almost 40% of their plays went for 0 or negative yards. They didn't have a target for Mike Williams in those 7 quarters, so it might be a combination of things that Mike Williams isn't the guy coming off the ACL right now. You're making a face.
I'm just saying, I mean, is that really a swing vote? Is that really a difference maker?
Well, but they would hope that he would be a difference maker, because maybe they're a little thin. Maybe they're not a team that's taking advantage of weak secondaries, bad safety positions like the Bengals, like you should, because their wide receivers just aren't that great. And they're not. And their number one wide receiver, who is great, is an insane person. I mean, our friend Andrew Siciliano pointed this out to me, how on the Hail Mary, I mean, he wasn't even trying to get the ball. He's just tackling. What is this? He's just crazy, man. He's awesome, though, but he is crazy. Russ, another stat from those 7 quarters, 4 for 11 in the red zone. And they haven't really run the ball very well. So
they haven't. But
I know it's a better matchup, but
The Bengals are giving up 30 points a game to plus 500 teams.
Oof.
Hytham got in my ear and reminded me. I actually did pick the Bengals
Okay.
on game day
Maybe
view.
switch it.
I might switch. We've got a couple hours to make that decision. But the Bengals not mathematically eliminated. They're currently at 23% with a win. If they lose, it'll be down to 5%.
23 is relatively high, and they do get the Cowboys, Titans, and Browns. I know the Browns have been a little feisty after this before finishing with the Broncos and Seahawks. So if you can get this win, I am buying that they're in the mix.
I would agree with that.
But that's what I'm saying. This is the end of the road type of game. Should be a proud team. This is a team that was a couple plays away from winning the Super Bowl. It could get blown up if they do not win this game and they do not make the playoffs.
Jamar Chase and Joey B are going to be happy if they lose this game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they haven't been happy.
Good point.
I mean, they've got to win this game.
So after Dan Moore had his issues with Myles Garrett, he goes up against Trey Hendrickson, who's got 33 pressures and 5 sacks in 130 snaps one-on-one against Moore. So
I think we see a lot of too tight.
opportunity.
I think we see a lot of too tight, and Darnell Washington's going to be playing that third tackle for this team.
Love that, dude.
All right, let's leave that one and go to the Arizona Cardinals. At the Minnesota Vikings, 3.5-point favorites. Over-under is 45. Joe Davis, G-Reg, and Pam Oliver on the call, Greg. We saw a Cardinals offense that was so hot, really get stifled by Mike Mack's defense in Seattle, going up against a Brian Flores defense that just saw Caleb throw for 350 yards. Who are these teams?
Interesting point there that the Flores defense is taking on a little bit of water. They're not blitzing as much. Kyler's really struggled against the blitz. Looked at the numbers this week, 25th according to PFF against the blitz, 5th when he's not pressured. All the actual numbers, success rate, all that stuff really goes down. So maybe this is a week Flores dials it up against. And for the Cardinals, I think it's a real test of toughness. Young team, new head coaching staff who's done a really good job overall. You really just got it handed to you in a big spot on the road. Now you have to go on the road again against a very challenging team, a type of game that can make or break you. If you're really a team that's going to be in it here for the long haul, I don't even need them to win this game. Just have it come down to the end and be representative of the Cardinals, because I still don't feel like I totally know who this team is. It's a bit of like a mental and physical toughness test, I think, for this team that I think's just been playing over their heads slightly all year, and maybe they can keep it going.
They're a physically tough team on both sides of the ball. I will give them that. But, you talk about the blitz. Let's not talk about pass pressure blitzes. Brian Flores is going to run blitz. They're going to gap this thing up across the board. They've got edge setters to not let Kyler get up there, and they may not get that upfield blitz rush. They may do the kind of the picket fence thing just to not let them leak, and then they've got some guys who can get in there and make plays because they wrote the secondary rotation can get those quarterbacks when they try, Josh Metellus, Harrison, guys like that. I'm interested to see if Minnesota's offense can get it going. I mean, I know JJ and Addison, we give them props every week. Darnold, props every week. I think I like the 3.5 number for Arizona to beat it. I like the Vikings to win, but I think this is going to be a real tough game because I don't think Arizona gets the credit of physicality, but I think the question of consistent physicality is one that they do need to answer.
Vikings fans actually this week, this is the week they decided to say, we're not getting enough credit. They are 9-2. They're 5th in the NFL in point differential. They've been extremely consistent as a team. Even the 2 losses they had in a row, it's not like they just weren't there and it was against good team. It was understandable. Like, they've been very consistent.
And they've been able to execute when the things that have been good for them aren't necessarily working.
That's a great point.
Like the game in Jacksonville where the offense and Sam Darnold did not have things going, the defense able to pick them up there. The game last week where the defense gives up back-to-back scoring drives by the Bears late, and special teams gives up an onside kick. They get into overtime. Darnold them go out there and execute. Where Sam Darnold, in terms of passer rating games over 100, it's him and Lamar right now, and then everybody else. Like Sam Darnold playing well in spots, and Jordan Addison. I think Sam Darnold threw the ball 22 times last week. 9 of those completions went to Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I mean
22 completions last week. 9 of them went to Jordan.
I mean, how many did JJ have? He didn't have hardly any. Right?
Not very many. He did draw a deep pass interference that was able to set them up on the 1 yard line.
Also, they did a great job pointing out on the broadcast on the first Addison touchdown, just how Jalen Johnson is just drifting backwards because he's worried about J.J. Jefferson, and that opens it up. Yeah. It's amazing because Hockenson had a great game too. Man, they really have a lot of depth of weapons.
Yeah. Aaron Jones.
And I think the tendency breaker was the Cardinals not having success in the red zone against Seattle, where they're playing on the road against a good team, against an improving defense. They get down there. They actually had a touchdown called back for penalty, and then they had to kick a field goal. That wound up being huge. The margins, I think, slim in that game. I think they're also slim in this one.
I would agree.
So slim that, once again, I can't remember who I picked.
This is a tough one. I picked the Cardinals, and I do worry that that's a early week pick of what I want to see happen versus really thinking they're a better team pound for pound than the Dolphins, than the Vikings. There is something about this search bar defense you're talking about. They're up to 12th in DVOA, and maybe we'll make this a weekly segment because you're absolutely right. I looked at the players getting snaps for them last week. A man named Dadrian Taylor Demerson had 64 snaps for them. And maybe the weekly segment we can tell you a little bit more about some of these players. A man named Naquan Jones played a significant amount of snaps at nose tackle. He's a 26-year-old who came out of Michigan State undrafted, spent 3 years with the Titans bouncing around in practice squads, was on the Dolphins actually at one point this year, practice squad, and then the Cardinals brought him back, and now here he is playing significant snaps from the great town of Evanston, Illinois, where my
North side
college
Chicago.
girlfriend was from.
Yeah,
so yeah, great place.
Go, baby.
Yeah, one search at a time. We will do our jobs and find out more about this.
Didn't even join the Cardinals actually until September 25th, and here he is playing big time snaps for them.
Yeah, we love it. Just getting a squad together. It's one day when they make the movie and Jonathan Gannon is doing that scene like a heist movie where you get everybody together. They're going to make a movie about this Cardinals team, and
I love it.
Maybe this quote will be in it. Let's go to the Houston Texans. The very up and down Houston Texans as of late. 4-point favorites at the Jacksonville Jaguars and all of their issues coming off of the bye. Kevin Kugler, Moose Johnston, and Laura Oakman on the call, Steve. Back here in the division where we thought the Texans would experience all that success with Nico Collins coming back. He played a great game, but they lose in the division to the Tennessee Titans. What if it happens again here in Duval?
And Trevor's back. Right, Trevor Lawrence is coming back off that shoulder injury for Jacksonville. He's going to be fresh. They're getting both their running backs back, ETN and
Bigsby.
Bigsby are coming back, so they're gonna feel fresh. And they know this Houston team might be questioning themselves. This is one, and Greg, I think you alluded to this very early in the season. Like nobody saw Houston coming. They've tasted success. Are they smelling themselves a little bit? Even with getting some of the additions that they made. Stephon Diggs, of course, is out for the rest of the season, but they're just not. They don't seem to have a good vibe. Now, this is the part of the season where we see teams do this year after year, kick it into gear, and they get rolling. This is the game they have to do this. This 5-number Houston favorite is way too big for me.
Agree. It was
way
six,
too big.
It was 6 initially. I think it's down to 4 now in some spots.
Okay, 4.
And the Texans are another one of those teams that could really use their bye. They're going to get it next week because they feel like they need a major reset. They got to unplug the console or something, and because they can't find solutions. They're not doing a good job coaching to me because they have the same issues every week. Run blocking. I asked Seth Payne, who does a great job on the radio there in Houston, just what is up? And he pointed to the tackles who are really highly paid, Tunsil and Titus Howard, in the running game, that it really has not been cohesive because they are one of the worst running teams in the NFL, despite having a great running back playing well. Like they're only, I think, 4 games all year in terms of a success rate being at a certain terrible level, and the Texans are 2 of them where they've just been. And some of it is their tackles, which are if you're not getting a lot out of your high investments in the running game. There's a 2-play sequence at the end of that game last week that really stuck with me. 2nd and 9 on the goal line. I think it was 2nd and goal on the 9. Late in the game where they're trying to win the game, and that was before Fairbairn missed the field goal that would have tied it. And just like 5 guys in the backfield wasting it down on Joe Mixon on 2nd down. 3rd down, who are they playing last week? Tennessee. They sent some extra rushers. Everyone's running through back-to-back plays where the offensive skill players had Zero chance. Negative chance of doing anything. In the biggest moments of the game, zero chance, and then they missed the field goal. Like, that's what's happening with this Texans team.
And you really see the offense slow up because Joe Mixon right now top 5 in the league in yards over expected.
He's awesome.
On outside runs because looking at the way that Howard is blocking on some of these outside runs, especially in that direction, those yards aren't expected because there's nothing there for Joe Mixon to get. And now you have to do it against Travon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen.
2 hammers.
Where you're not moving those guys on the outside. In fact, the Jags allowing the second fewest rushing yards over expected on runs to the outside, specifically because of the work that those guys were able to do against tackles that are better in the run game, right?
Yeah.
Than Tunsil and Howard.
Patrick, that's such good stuff because, Laramie Tunsil, this dude's one of the best athletes in the NFL. I mean, he's been banged up a little bit, but you can power, you can athlete him, you can pull him, and it's just not working. I mean, I don't know if this is something where remember Bobby Slowick, the OC, was a guy who got head coaching opportunities after last year's first year as an OC. Why this run game isn't working? Because actually, it's been 2 years in a row where they have not run the ball, and now you're hearing people saying C.J. Stroud is starting to look at the pressure. That's not him. He's somebody who felt very comfortable in the pocket last year, doing what he does, and now if he's kind of anticipating he's going to get hit,
it's a bummer seeing him regress some. Now, he did have a lot of really special throws in that game, along with some really negative plays where he did seem to see the pass rush, and you can see with his expressions and body language how frustrated he is getting. One note, which we haven't mentioned on the game, were you guys aware Doug Peterson is the coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars still? It's like we sort of left that 2 weeks ago, and we assumed he wasn't going to be. Remember when we got to the bye? He is the coach.
It's been a game of survivor.
I think that's good, actually. Why bother? You don't have a better coach in the building.
That's
at the end of the year, it's gonna happen and stuff. But if it doesn't make sense, don't just do it just to do it.
My first time in Jacksonville for this regime, I was watching closely as Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson were out there in practice at camp, and the GM was walking towards the coach, and the coach would continue to find a reason to walk around in the other direction, just doing circles around the field. And it's a very interesting dichotomy, and it's a fun game of Survivor to watch both of them.
Respect to Doug Peterson.
No, shout out to Coach.
Much respect to Doug Peterson.
They need to have just a Doug Peterson appreciation day during the Eagles playoff run. Like, have him outside at the statue. Just like remember when you were a legend. He still is a legend. Still the coach. We're still doing this show. We got 4 more games to get to. We're gonna take a break, and we'll come back with the rest of the slate, including some primetime games that aren't what we expected coming into the season. Back on NFL Daily. Shout out to our broadcast crew on this next game. I think Catalan, Tiki, Jason McCourty, AJ Ross been doing a good job this year.
Jason McCourty is so good. He sees the game a certain way. He describes it. He is so good.
And they get an opportunity to watch a young, hot quarterback with an offense that just put up a ton of points. I'm talking about Will Levis at the Washington Commanders, who are 5.5-point favorites. The over-under 45. We already discussed the broadcast crew, as we didn't know what to expect from this Tennessee Titans team. But now, Steve, with Tony Pollard playing well, with Calvin Ridley and Will Levis playing well, aside from a pick six, sometimes you get got, right? He got against the Houston Texans, but he came back. They won the game.
Yeah.
And the Tennessee Titans are fun, Steve.
They're fun. I mean, we know they're a tough team. Their defense started out as one of the best in the NFL. Kind of faded a little bit, but now Will Levis is playing well, and he's got an opportunity to go against a secondary in Washington that's a question mark, and it's been their question mark all season long. They've been able to manage some things defensively because their front seven is so good, and Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner. That's a Frankie Louvu reference for Jordan.
There you go.
Right there, had to get that in. But this is one where Washington. Are they going to have any running backs for this game? All right, that's one thing. If Brian Robinson comes out, Austin Eckler, we don't know if he's going to be in. Doesn't look like it. It's intriguing. I mean, their kicker. Oh man, last game was killer, and he's hurt now. They just put him on IR, right? So This is tricky. The 5.5 is
Probably should have done that before last week's game. That
if he
he was hurt anyway.
If he doesn't play last week, they win.
Yeah.
Because nobody on the defense tackled Kevontae Turpin.
No.
But Austin Seibert's effort was one of the worst that I've seen by a kicker on a kick return in a very, very long time.
Yeah, this is one where we're going to have to see Jaden Daniels come out and really ball out. We're going to see him.
They didn't deserve to win that game anyways. When you watch that game, the Commanders, it's not like they played well.
No, they didn't. They made big plays, and that was it. But they got dominated in pretty much every aspect of the game. But I think this is one where Jaden Daniels can get it going. I mean, him and Scary Terry and some plays. If they hit enough big plays, that's all they need. And defensively, I don't know. I mean, they're still trying to make Patrick, but they might get Marshawn Lattimore back this week. I was told they weren't expecting him back until the following game. But he has practiced this week.
Well, that's a great sign.
If they get him on the field, they can move Mikey Samersill back into the slot where he's like that little dude's a stud anyway. But a slot is where he really shines. That'll really help him in a game like that.
That would be huge, especially in this game where the team they're facing has one clear number one receiver. Where in the past that's a Lattimore assignment. Now Calvin Ridley is quick. That's a tough assignment coming off of an injury, and maybe it's something where Lattimore can single up Noah Brown. Not Noah Brown, rather. Matt Lattimore can single up, Westbrook-Akina on the other side, and you can double Ridley. However it is that you want to that would be massive for them because that's been a problem. And Brian Robinson was at practice. That's a surprise to everyone who went crazy on the fantasy waiver wire for Jeremy McNichol. So we'll see. It sounds like Brian Robinson might be able to play.
That would be huge for them.
Injuries is big. I don't think Jaden is getting bothered by the ribs at all whatsoever because them calling speed option and him running up the middle on one of their first snaps of the game and him not playing with any fear at all, 2-point conversion in a big spot. Thought he showed enough in that fourth quarter of that game to really make you feel good. I don't.
How impressive was that?
I actually thought he played a pretty solid game overall. That their shortcomings were more. His guys weren't open, couple drops, couple penalties, a little bit of everything, and not getting help from the running game. So I feel good about where he is at, but not good enough to give them 5.5 points. Just previewing the against the spread picks pod that's coming up on Friday. It's going to drop on Friday this week with Cynthia. Tennessee was my number one pick last week. I was loving that 8.5. They went and won outright. Wouldn't surprise me if they won outright this week either.
No.
Like I'd give a little edge to Washington, but to me, the Titans are better than their record indicates at this point in the season, and Washington maybe is a little worse.
Yeah, I agree, especially the way the Callahan has schemed up Calvin Ridley. As of late, Tony Pollard kind of eliminating teams playing too high safeties and giving Calvin Ridley a whole bunch of space to work for, where it's not like Will Levis making some tight window throw. He's able to put the ball out in space and let Calvin Ridley use that adjustment ability to go get it. I have wondered and thought about this, Steve, because you were one of the very first people I remember several years ago that put this idea in my head of late season cliff. And
there it is.
And for years, I have wrote it off as some sort of statistical anomaly, just like a ghost in the numbers that sometimes shows up. And then we look at it and we use hindsight to say that this is always what happens. And I'm starting to believe. And then I'm looking at Terry McLaurin running down the field on the right side to potentially win the game for the Washington Commanders late, where he has been lined up 5% of the time this year, just 31 snaps out wide. Adjustments like those, do those make you believe that there's been a change, or are you still a late season cliff believer?
Yeah, I mean, look, and again, this is where I mentioned before they have Anthony Lynn on that coaching staff, where he may have to say, it's getting cold. I know if we get Brian Robinson back, we have to pound the football. We have to protect our quarterback a little bit more, and the best way to do that is to run. Now, that would not be easy to do against Tennessee, right? But they've got to, like you said, that adjustment. That's something they have to do. But Cliff, the numbers bear it out. Talking to opposing coaches bear it out. So, but, this quarterback what he showed, that was a great point you made. What he showed late in that game against the Cowboys, he's got a little stuff to him.
That was encouraging. Another point against Cliff in that game, for instance. The Cowboys kept running the same blitz with Parsons on the inside, and it kept working. So that's coaching in game adjustments, that sort of thing of like we do one thing, do we do it well enough, and are we talented enough to really pull that off? Because to give Cliff credit, his scheme, I believe, made the level of talent on the roster outside of Daniels and McLaurin look better than it really is. And that includes the offensive line talent.
1,000%.
And it includes the skill position talent. You're just throwing throw after throw to Noah Brown, and on the biggest play of the game, they're throwing it to Bates. What's his name? Jeremy Bates? John Bates? One of their tight ends.
Yeah.
It's like
I think it's John.
John Bates, and it's just not an overly talented roster. So it's a couple things competing. And yeah, you're going up against a Titans team where Levis, he hasn't taken as big a leap as Bryce, but they're kind of on a similar trajectory of second-year players who got sat down for a little bit and has come back and is at least closer to the best version of, I think, that we're going to get out of Will Levis. Taking way too many sacks, still a big-time mistake last week. But you also saw the big-time throws last week. He made some great throws in that game. And so I think if you're a Will Levis family member or fan or fantasy owner, like, I think this is very encouraging. This is kind of the Levis you want to see. I think his ceiling isn't like incredibly high, but you're making progress.
All right, not a full segment, but Greg, are you ready to lock it in? Will Levis, quarterback, Tennessee Titans, 2025?
I don't think he will.
Oh, okay.
Personally. I think Callahan is going to want his guy unless he takes another step, like the step, we'll get to it,
How
that
to get his
Bryce
guy,
took
though? I mean,
last week.
They might win too many games to get his guy.
Right, so maybe it'll be too difficult, but
Hey, it's a good problem to have.
I think he needs to keep it going and take another step even.
All right.
Get
Well,
the Shador conversation started, Patrick.
another team, a team that feels like it is locked in. It's a young quarterback playing host on Monday Night Football to Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. The Denver Broncos, 5.5-point favorites. It's MNF, so of course Joe, Troy, Lisa on the call, or you could watch a couple of brothers do a game broadcast as well. Greg, we saw what Myles Garrett did against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Quinn Miners, Ben Powers, Garrett Bowles, Mike McGlinchey played well enough to keep Bo Nix looking good against this Jim Schwartz defense.
Probably, because Sean Payton will get quick enough throws that beats the pass rush, and he's been great at scheming up quick throws. And Bo Nix deserves credit when he is holding on to the ball and he's getting protected. He's pushing the ball down the field better. They pick out the matchups for Garrett sometimes, so like if he wants to get over there on McGlinchey, I don't think that's going to be pretty, and it's on national TV.
He'll be over there against McGlinchey.
I know Myles Garrett always tries all that, Patrick.
Yeah, is there anybody on the Broncos to make him mad?
I know he always tries, but he was pretty quiet in that 1 p.m. game against Talise Fuaga and the Saints. But man, he showed out on that primetime game. I just think he's got to show up and have a nice game here, and it's a tricky one. I think their defense has enough just raw talent with Ward and everything they have going on that it's certainly no gimme. The Browns are not. I think the Patriots are kind of a gimme for good teams for the most part. I do not think the Browns are a gimme.
Absolutely not. And the 5.5 number to me is insane. Unless they
insane.
I think they must think Jameis can get up there and get winded. No. Jameis will not.
They've had some bad games with Jameis too, to be fair. They've had 2 great ones, 2 bad ones.
Yeah, I just think, look, the offensive line, even though as banged up as it is, they played a pretty darn good game against a really good Steelers front, right? TJ Watt wasn't able to really get going. They called the game well. Nick Chubb's starting to get his legs back, guys.
Yeah.
They're going to be able. They did some good ball control stuff. Oh, and let's not forget, Greg and Patrick, this is the Jerry Jeudy game.
Okay, I like that. That is a revenge game.
And Jerry Jeudy has shown up in some big spots for the Browns.
Playing well.
He is playing very well this
I was
year.
going to say, playing well, maybe he's going to get that new contract. And I kind of forgot. They got him on a very reasonable contract. I think they're feeling good about that.
Absolutely.
Exceedingly reasonable. And, playing against an NFL legacy, the son of a very good cornerback in –
best cornerback in the NFL.
Well, I'm talking about last week against Joey Porter Jr.
Oh.
I thought you were going past Surtain, senior.
The circumstances are different this time around.
Oh,
and if Vance wants to put P2 on Jerry Jeudy, then perhaps the revenge aspect could get ratcheted up, but the difficulty also gets ratcheted
It's
up.
not happening if P2's on him.
I think that makes for the Elijah Moore game, because I feel like Riley Moss is dealing with an injury as well, and that number 2 in Denver might be in question, because I feel like he was on the report this week.
Yes, I I don't think he's necessarily expected to play in this game. They're pretty healthy up front in terms of their pass rush, and so that's a matchup. I like that the Broncos have really surprised us, and they're going to be, I don't know about a main character, but a really big part of this closing stretch. You got them in primetime in this game. You got them against the Chargers in a couple weeks. That was the game that was moved to Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah,
or was that
flex.
the Bengals? They also have at Bengals and a Chiefs in there. So Broncos fans kind of been looking for credit. I see them. They're a noisy fan base on Blue Sky and on Twitter. And all I have to say is, like, here you go. This is great. I think it's actually cool. They're a surprising character of this season, and they're going to be in the mix in a lot of these big games down the stretch. And we'll see. This is the first test of a game you should win in primetime. So
Yes.
go ahead and win it.
They should win. The 5.5 is big. But Vance Joseph and this defense, too, has been really, really consistent this season.
Shout out to our friend Andrew Siciliano. Twice he's getting mentioned in this show. He's got this great Browns podcast /
Right?
YouTube show, and he got a great clip from Jameis Winston saying Nick Chubb said, "I love you, man." And it's like, if you can get Nick Chubb to say that, there's a lot of love in this building for this man, Jameis Winston. Let's go. Jameis Winston certainly making himself a main character down the stretch.
Yeah, the quintessential vibes quarterback, where the vibes were decidedly not good in Cleveland a few weeks ago.
Ordering up a dub.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6-point favorites, Greg, at the Carolina Panthers, who just took the Chiefs all the way to the wire. 46.5 points is the over-under. Chris Myers, Mark Schlereth, and Jen Hale on the call. We saw Bryce very, very good in pressure. Jatavian Sanders back at practice, looked healthy after a scary moment, kind of landed on his head towards the end of the first half. But they are going up against a buzzsaw Bucs team that you think is making a push to the playoffs.
I do, and this is a great game to see Bryce, whether he can continue that run. I like the Bucs to win, and they might even cover because their offense is just that good against one of the worst defenses in the league. But the story here is Bryce. Last week, we talked about, can you be consistent, stacking these weeks after weeks? Well, that wasn't consistent. This was a whole nother level up. This was a different Bryce Young than we've ever seen at the NFL level. That throw that he had to Sanders down the sideline, that's just crazy. The 3rd and 8 he had to Moore as he was getting trashed. I mean, he was outstanding last week. Nick Wesseling texted me. He went back and watched Nick Wesseling out here grinding the tape. And it was pretty cool that he did that because I had already thought Bryce would be the type of quarterback Chris Wesseling would love.
Yes.
I knew his type. He loved guys who could throw with anticipation and be accurate. And Bryce's accuracy and his anticipation and his timing in that game, and as it's gotten better each and every week, has been fantastic. So the Wesselings are on board, and I'm looking forward to watching if Bryce can keep this thing going, because that was like, hey now, like, all right, like, we're right on track. If we see the rest of the season he's playing like that, that's what you want to see out of your second-year quarterback. That was special.
I love this game. +6, again, for Tampa, too much for me. Bryce, after talking to Vance Joseph after they played the Broncos, I think it was Bryce's first game back, he was like, that kid made every throw he's supposed to make and every right decision he's supposed to make, and we've seen him build on that, right? So, therefore, everyone else now has faith they're playing better football. Defensively, that's the issue. On that side of the ball, can Baker and those guys get off of the explosive plays? And that's part of the thing in the passing game that they're able to do. By the way,
do they even need to, though? They're actually one of the teams where this is how the Giants played them. A lot of teams play these days. It's just like, can you work down the field when 12 plays, 13 plays without making a mistake? And the Bucs are always like, yeah, we can.
Yeah, that's how they
bet.
play.
We'll do it every time. They're awesome.
And a lot of that, the Panthers' defense has improved because this was statistically one of the worst rushing defenses we've ever seen. Now they're the second worst in the league this year. 46.7% success rate on runs, 26 explosive runs. The defense, especially in the secondary, it was a laughable performance tackling against the Chiefs, even against Patrick Mahomes late, where now the issue is Bucky Irving, who sometimes is untackleable.
That dude is good.
And I'm imagining this Panthers secondary where J.C. Horn has been solid in some sorts of pass coverage. In the run game, it has really been hopeless in the secondary for Carolina, where I'm comfortable with the points. I
kind of am too, because they're a good team with the lead. I think they're built to win now. They keep piling it on. There's no mercy. Baker Mayfield in this offense. They're good at these long drives. They can shorten games, and their running game has really improved a ton. They're good throwing to their running back. So I think Bryce could play well, but it could be 35, 24, 27, and it happens. Now, this is not a revenge game, but I did want to point this out. Maybe you guys can help me, your wordsmiths, of what type of game this is. Liam Cohen replaced Dave Canales, who moved on for a better position. But I'm sure when you're replacing someone who's kind of a hotshot coordinator, you want to do even better than that guy. And frankly, I think he has. He's done an even better job than Baker Mayfield than Canales has done. So I don't know what type of game that is, but it's something.
I'll tell you what, they have the same agency, they have the same representation.
Okay.
So that's like the big smile game. Because if Liam Cohen gets this one, he's going to be interviewing for some head coach.
Okay, the big paycheck type of game. Okay, yeah. Because he's like, I'm even better than this guy who got a head coaching job.
Even though his defense, Canales' defense is, this is one where Liam better go ahead and show out.
Okay.
Yeah. The rising tide lifting all boats.
There you go.
Game. Bringing us to our final doc of the evening. On Sunday Night Football, Steve, the San Francisco 49ers dealing with a ton of injuries. Just one more marquee than others, going up against the red-hot Buffalo Bills, who had a chance to rest. They are 7-point favorites at home. The over-under 44.5. It's Sunday Night Football, so Mike, Chris, and Melissa there on the call. Is there any hope in Santa Clara?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, this is, like, even the defense we're so used to. They've been getting hit too much, and we know Buffalo with Josh running the way they're running. They don't tackle well. Gosh, they miss so many tackles once it gets beyond the first level. That's something we just don't see out of the 49ers. It's going to be cold. Brock Purdy is still a question mark, I believe, if he's going to be able to play. I just think this is the Bills in a landslide game. This is now Josh Allen trying to compete for Lamar and Saquon for the 3/4 of the season lead for the MVP.
The injuries are so massive to even talk about this game. If you have Purdy and Trent Williams out there, I'm not even talking about Bosa, although he would be a big deal too. You got a chance. You got a chance to compete in any game offensively, and they can be tougher. Now, in the end, I think the Bills would outlast them because the Bills can't be pushed around as well as they used to be.
Right.
They're playing pretty well up front. They're certainly tough on offense, and they're going to be healthier too. They're coming off a bye, and Cooper finally had a week to rest, and maybe they get Keon Coleman back, and it's tricky. We're taping this Wednesday to get it out for you before the Thanksgiving holiday and everything, and we don't know if Purdy is going to play or not. If they don't have Purdy, you couldn't make this number high enough. I'm sure it would go from 6.5 to. They're probably trying to balance it of like maybe he's playing. He did throw some on Monday, which is a good sign, but he did that a little last week too, so we just don't know.
Here's something baffling to me. Have you guys been watching Deebo Samuel? He is not playing well. He had a couple drops. I mean, things that were sure-handed last week. It just doesn't seem like he's that guy in terms of early in the season he's playing okay, but he is not. He's really got to relock back in because the mistakes he's making seem more in his head than the physical mistakes. But just dropping the balls, he just doesn't seem like right now like the gangster type of dude that we've seen the past couple of years.
And even when Deebo did make the play last week, it gets called back due to a penalty. Christian McCaffrey's best run last week, he winds up getting the ball punched out.
Right.
And the Packers recover. And over on the defensive side of the ball, they haven't gotten the stops we expect them to get. Kind of carried at the start of the season by one of the best players in the NFL in Fred Warner, where that dam has felt like it started to burst, and it's caused me to use hindsight and look back. It's like, well, they're playing without Dre Greenlaw in the Super Bowl. They almost win that game. They have to finish the season without Talanoa Hufanga, who also hasn't played this season.
After missing most of last season.
Since week 5, where maybe things weren't so bad with Steve Wilkes. Maybe that was the best that this 49ers defense.
It's also a different team. At one point last year, they showed the 4 defensive line starters against the Packers.
Hargrave's been out.
We're not there last year.
Yeah.
So they're guys they signed like Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd, who are solid players if you're adding them to the mix to be your 5th, 6th lineman. But now they're your lead guys with
Floyd's
Bosa
legit.
out.
Floyd's legit.
He's legit, but he was more legit when he wasn't 33 years old. He's a role player, and they're needing him to be like their top edge rusher when Bosa's out, and that's too much. It's tough. This Bills team, it's a wagon, little dangerous, but I like your squad, Eric, behind the glass.
There you go.
Year. And I like the matchup. The San Francisco offensive line not playing well really at all either, especially when Williams isn't there and the Bills can get after it. So I don't think this is going to be a good Sunday night game. It's just some years it's not your year.
Well, we got so much on the plate beforehand. These are just like the little crumbs left after that Thanksgiving.
It would take the Bills. It feels like it would take the Bills making a ton of mistakes.
Yeah.
Just a ton of mistakes. And I don't see them do that the way they're playing right now. They're the safety Bills. This is safe, Josh.
Gosh, we're talking about this game, a Bills-Niners game, like it's just.
We'll see. Maybe they'll prove us wrong. I don't think so. You guys always prove me right each and every week in those seats, making it the best preview show in the business. That is it for our Week 13 preview. What week are we in? 13.
We're here.
Love it.
One of those.
I love it. Thank you for watching NFL Daily. We'll be back to recap the Thanksgiving games. And like I said, the picks show is coming up later in the week. But I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving.
I will.
In the meantime, when we're talking about this 49ers team being done by Week 13, you know football is back.